All right, so I'm going to get us started. I thank everyone for being here today. This is Accessibility Virtual Reality. It's our 5th or 6th meetup, and we're really happy to have you all here today from all over the world. My name is Thomas Logan, and I'm the organizer of this meetup and from a company called Equal Entry. As we mentioned, this meetup, we seek to explore the ways to have online social communication that's accessible for everyone. So we heavily request you give us any feedback. You can comment on the meetup page. You can talk to myself or Stacy, who's also here in the room. We take the feedback that we get from this meetup and we share it with the Mozilla Hubs team, and we seek to make this experience more and more accessible each time that we meet. We want to acknowledge and thank Tess, our captioner today from White Coat Captioning, and Jolly McPhee from the Internet Society of New York, who is creating our video stream and putting this presentation onto YouTube. So if you have not been able to come to our previous events, every single event that we've done is also streamed and archived on YouTube. So you can go back and watch any of the presentations that we've hosted in the past, and we will have our presentations also on YouTube for all of the presentations in the future. That being said, I want to introduce our speaker today, Roland Dubois. I've known Roland for several years now, and he's a pioneer and advocate for accessibility in XR. He's the lead product UX UI designer at Virtual Facility and XR Accessibility at Virtually. He's a Mozilla Tech speaker and the creator of Grabber, a globally recognized avatar for VR on the web. Very excited to learn from his presentation tonight. We haven't ever had a discussion around how to leverage hackathons, and I'm really excited to learn from you, Roland. Take it away.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk about the way I operate and think outside of the box in my day-to-day job as a lead product UX designer. Now that Tom already gave a little bit of an intro about me, I'm going to quickly skip through this. I am not only a tech speaker, but I also am actually holding workshops in WebXR with A-Frame in New York City, hold events and bring the immersive technology of the web, the immersive web, to actually anyone that's interested to learning it. And I also am interested always to experiment in immersive technologies to bring the current VR, AR industry into an accessible state so it can be used by everyone. Today, this is our agenda. I'm going to talk to you guys about design and design maturity. I will talk specifically about the facility management industry. That's the vertical in which I've been working in the last year. And also I'll talk about ideas that don't fit a product roadmap, and then how to drive your ideas into the product roadmap in that startup or company. Here, a quick question to the crowd. I would like to know if you could show me with some kind of emoticon if you're working in the design area. Anyone? Okay, one, couple. All right. So who is working in a startup? Right, waving hands, smiley faces. Okay. So design maturity. In design and startups is, as we know, these are like the growing pains because these startups are scrappy and messy. Obviously, there's very little time and energy to actually experiment beyond the product roadmap. And the focus of a startup is to focus on product market fit. Sales stream is usually the driver of decisions and what comes into a roadmap. And design is basically trying to keep up with the agile development process of the teams, the engineering teams. More often than you would imagine, accessibility is being prioritized because of design cost and tech cost. And the quote I actually received was that ADA compliance letters that come in eventually when the startup takes off are just the cost of doing business. Obviously, it's not an optimal space, but it is a reality which we can actually tackle. So I want to talk about design and UX maturity. If that's something that you're familiar with, it might be repetitive here, but I think a lot of people don't really know about that. It's a scale to measure the business relationship with design, and specifically with user experience. It's actually a scale to measure the maturity of the design company, and that doesn't increase overnight. It takes many years, and it happens in small steps. So education of design is a part of the designer's job in a product company. Jared Spool explains UX design maturity in 5 stages. So we have the dark ages, which is basically a startup that is starting from scratch. They're trying to figure out how to actually ship a product. So there's a team hustling to figure out what is needed in order to bring a product to market. There's not much room or no room to actually figure out user experience design aspects. The next level of that is then spot UX design, he calls it like that, where you have one super powered UX designer that takes on all the UX projects. You still have a siloed of engineering team, a siloed of backend and QA team. So it's basically you're doing user experience on demand as the one-man army in that environment. Then the next level would be then to build out a UX design team. It's a UX pool of people that have specialties in UI, UX, and research, and they will be handed out to different teams that work on different projects or stacks in different squads. And there still it's a UX design as a service. That means it's not really integrated. It's still the designers and then the rest. And the next level, and we're talking about if we want to look at companies that are on those levels, I can talk about the embedded UX design. It's definitely something, if you know software companies that have pods that are built out of a design, engineering, and product squad, then that is embedded UX, because user experience or design is part of the think tank, the cross-functional team. So companies like Spotify, Wayfair, they use that kind of embedded UX principle. And then the big goal is the infused UX design, where everyone is fluid in design skills. Again, the scale is, it's a job of the designer to advocate for design across every person in the company. And over a couple of years, decades, you actually grow into this infused UX design stage. And no matter where you are in your journey in your company right now, there's a huge opportunity to go from that one-man army Superman job, right, the spot UX position, and leverage the time that you spend on design to bring in more attendance and more focus on design workshopping and facilitation ideation sessions. There's a lot of opportunity here to build yourself a voice and accelerate the growth of the startup into a UX design as a service stage. And also to experiment, right? And like as a lead UX designer or any person that is basically head sparing design in a company, there's design operations that's called design ops. We all know the DevOps probably, but design ops is actually a thing. It's where you basically have to become the communication bridge between product, sales, engineering, and design. We have to build out the design process, a pipeline. How do you bring design into the development and time it so that it stays on top of the engineering backlog? You build features from small versions and strengthen them into new versions. So you build minimum viable products and then build on top features. You keep always a focus as a designer. You always keep a focus on UX, accessibility. And that's the visual part, where we talk about color, contrast, readability, and cognitive like text. So it's easy, digestible content. User research is a part of design ops. and getting into a feedback loop with the actual customers, and obviously strategic planning with product and sales down the road. So none of this is probably new for the most of you, but I want to talk to you about the actual vertical I've been working in, the facility management. And in that, I will take you on a journey where you can get a little bit of insight what is facility management and what are the struggles and the challenges that customers that my company was catering to are actually facing every day. And for that example, because I worked in the East Coast of the US with companies, but I'm going to give you an example of a university clinic in Germany. That is called the LMU Klinikum Großhadern in Munich, Germany. It's a complex. You see on the left, bottom left is a complex, a giant building. It's nicknamed the toaster based off its shape. But it is built in 1977 and one of the largest clinic complexes in Europe. Has over 2,000 beds and 10,000 people and staff. So why am I talking about this building? Because I worked for 14 months in my civil service in that building, and I was running operations like as a helper on a station for sick children. And I was running around, going from all the layers of the buildings and catering to all the different needs, from running a station to getting into the repair rooms and even catching medication for sick children, like in the pharmacy's tract of that building. What you see on the right hand side here is just the size of this building. The hallways of this building are miles long. They're actually called streets. So if you think about this complex as like an ecosystem, the people that are visiting and the people that are sick, the patients, are two different customers that going through this complex, and they're seeing a certain layer. And what they don't see is actually what is behind the scenes. So here's an example of all the different kind of aspects that make it possible to run a building, an ecosystem like this. So there's air conditioning, HVAC, ventilation systems. All hospitals here, also in the US, in New York especially, they have all their own separate power plants. So if a Sandy happens, like a super storm Sandy, and the power goes out, they have their own power plants. So if you see in the hospital a power plug with a red cover on it, you know that you can plug in your iPod if the city goes dark, because they run on their own power plant. They have generators, they have circuit boxes, they have fire escape routes, they have elevators that actually run even if there's a fire in the building. They have intensive care units, and they have like a lot of things that are just to be maintained. But also they have new things that come up. They have construction, they have power outages, they have fires even in this building, right? So there's a lot that goes on, and you don't see it as a patient, and you don't see it as a visitor, because the people that are working around the clock, making sure that everything is working fine and people don't get sick because of the rooms being too cold or too hot. So there's a lot of responsibility there. So let's talk about the user personas that we worked on, defining the kind of people that work in this ecosystem, the facility management workers. So there's a very interesting hierarchy. And again, I'm referring here to the US kind of way to deal with things. I'm not 100% sure if it's vastly different in Germany, but I'm using the German building as a reference because of NDAs and all this other stuff. So we have a director level, a manager level, a supervisor, and the worker and a specialist, and then we have a dispatcher. So the images that you see here are not 100% representative of the age group and the gender and the ethnicity of the people. They're usually, these images are from like schools to advertise for the job. The fact is that the age group actually is 35 to 65. It's an aging workforce. They're all union workers, which is interesting when you try to conduct user research because there's a lot of limitations. A lot of them are veterans, which is also a very important factor to consider when you're catering to like people that might have some disabilities of some kind, and just purely because of their previous engagements. Maybe they were like stationed in dangerous areas and got hurt. And then they have, most of them have engineering degrees, and the resources are always very limited. The ecosystem consists of many different things like airflow, security, lighting, energy, controllers, sensors like heat, airflow, humidity. If you think about these building complexes, they not only have living quarters like beds for like intensive care units, they have also operation rooms. An operation room, like an ER, emergency room operation rooms, they have very limited, they have a very specific threshold of temperature that is allowed to be in that room by law. If the temperature drops underneath that threshold or above that threshold, that room is shut off and cannot be used. And not using that room will cost the hospital $50,000 a day. So there's direct costs connected to the fact that if the balance is off, it costs a lot of money. So there's a lot of responsibility on these people. But now is the question, like, what tools do they use? What do they do? Like, what's their job? You see a person with a clipboard, a person with a lot of screens, and I'll talk about the many screens in a bit. But yeah, so these are the tools. There's building automation systems and building management systems. And you can clearly see the interfaces and the visuals that people use in these very important positions. They're cluttered. There's an absolute cognitive overload. There's zero, like very little to zero color accessibility to be seen in these screens. And they try to show dimensional visuals in a three-dimensional isometric way, but still it's flat, it's rendered. So there's no kind of inspecting around it. And it's not really a good execution here either. On the upside, this is keyboard accessible. And why is it keyboard accessible? Because of the software that's underlying. So the reason why this looks like this, you would ask yourself, who is the designer who designs this, right? And the fact is, in my research, I found out that it's not actually designers who design this, it's engineers. It's actually part of the contracting company that gets the job to install the mechanical engineering job, to install an HVAC system on a floor, or like construction job. One of those specialists then goes and learns that software to plug and play pieces from those like manufacturers, and creates that screen. He, as the person, like plugs and plays together a screen that and she or he thinks that would be the most helpful, most reasonable to see, like if there's issues with that specific system. And there's one system. If you can imagine how many air handling units in that gigantic building are, you can imagine that you won't be able to digest all of that information on one screen. There's just too much data, and it's not really targeted. And if there is something going wrong, it's not very likely you're going to catch it. So the result is that there's a bunch of pain points that come through. It's obviously the facility management team is actually working more reactive than proactively. That means that they're actually waiting for a phone call that someone complains there's something wrong in that room, instead of seeing it on the screen, you know, because they're just physically unable to see it. Yeah, and budgets are tight. Resources are limited. Workers, every single time there's a new budget negotiation and a new contract goes out, the first thing where people will save money is on the maintenance, and that's directly impacting these workers. And there's very hard to, like, almost impossible to measure the quality or improve that kind of work that they're doing. And the context that you see on the screen doesn't really provide you any additional information or meaningful context. And therefore, you can't do deep digging into what the root causes of problems are. So you see a bunch of pain points here. And obviously, in the company, as a designer, we had a lot of opportunities to explore. And displaying alarms in a concise and contextual way is one of these opportunities, like tracking quality of work and presenting clean, accessible interfaces. That clearly was traditionally 2D data visualization, and that is one thing that is on the roadmap and was on the roadmap and has been part of the company's goals. Now, I saw also opportunities for like bringing in some 3D and XR, some spatial visualization, and that definitely was not yet on the product roadmap. So my question was, where is the problem located? We're talking about an ecosystem as a building. So I want to see alarm data in a spatial context. Maybe it is related to other things, right? What is the context, the root cause of the problem? Can I see alarms or sensors going off in one room, in another room, and I realize it's actually the neighboring room who has faulty sensors, you know? And also the resources, the workforce. Where is the person that solves the problem anytime? Usually, the engineering shops are in the second, in a lower floor. So if you think about the Klinikum Großhadern as being a building that has 20 flights, there's 3 flights below the ground as well. So there's the engineering tract, and then there's the disposal tract, and there is more underneath the ground that the eye meets, because the normal visitor and the patient will never see it. But I had the privilege to see it because I was running around doing chores for the station. So and those facility management workers, they are located on the lower levels. They in dark rooms and don't have daylight, and the small packed rooms with folders falling on them. So it's quite interesting what they go through from an emotional level. So I do have a deep empathy for them, and also understand that there is definitely room for improvement. So my point was like, can we measure and improve the resource management? How can you calculate how fast the worker can get to the problem, how long it takes them to do it, just in order to enable them to do a better job and also give them something to succeed and set them up for success in general. So that was my little deep dive into facility management. And I showcased a few opportunities. So now I have to crystallize out the ideas that specifically don't fit the roadmap. So my hypothesis was that visualizing alarm data in its spatial context improves the speed and quality of problem assessment and resolution. And my challenge was keeping the app interface keyboard accessible, screen readable, and progressively enhancing the visualization of the spatial data from 2D to 3D, and then XR, AR, VR. And I built this out in like 4 different points to achieve that kind of structure to build by going through these stages. First, I need to create an ideal user story. Like my idea was like, how would it be if we had the tools, the right tools? I need to visualize that as a user story. Then I list out the user pay points, so actually the things that are bridging between those, like the ideal and the real. And then I abstract those ideas and I generalize a statement. And then I share those goals and build a minimum viable product. Are we still all here? Can I get a little bit of a emoticon somewhere to see that you are still all with me? 1, 2, all right. Cool. There's a lot of information here and I want to be mindful because there's a lot to digest. In this user story, I have a dispatcher, which is in one part of the building, getting a call from a nurse in another part of the building that the operation room has a high temperature. In this case, the dispatcher then looks at a screen and sees the alarm data from a sensor in the room and the other rooms in the floor that have similar kind of signs. With that information, the dispatcher then can extract the information, can extract the fact that there's actually an issue with the chiller on the roof. The dispatcher creates a work order, attaches the alarm data and the issue to that work order, and then the dispatcher looks for a specialist to fix that chiller issue. The specialist is in his shop on the lower levels, and he gets that he receives that work order, and then when it's sent out, it calculates an ETA of about 25 minutes for time to arrival of the worker on the roof to fix that chiller. And when the chiller is fixed on the roof by the worker will then sign off the work order, and the dispatcher gets a notification, can go back on the platform and sees then in his 3D visualization that the temperature is normalized in the rooms that were currently a problem. So that's the user story. Now, I'm going to list out the pain points. So first is, where is the problem located? Like, how do I find the problem? Like, what systems are connected to close to that problem, and where's the worker located to solve the problem? Like I categorize those as data quality problems, because we're relying on the building automation systems to feed us alarm data that has context, and we can extract that context in some ways. And but that is definitely a problem that is, we can't make that data up, right? It has to be there. So like location and alarms have to be figured out. The next thing is, how long will it take the worker to get there, and when is the problem solved? So that is a math problem. We definitely can do that. That has nothing to do with outside sources, just us figuring out the math problem. Then we have, how can the software create, and these are business logistical problems. How can the software that we have create 3D models without needing external resources? How is this a scalable and device-independent solution that can easily be maintained? And then also a business and user need, how is this, can this be accessible with screen readers and keyboard and assistive technology? Now, I list out the pain points, and now I have to abstract them. So I have data quality problems, math problems, and logistical problems, and I can sum them up basically in an abstraction that we have locations, the static objects, and we have people, they're moving objects. And then we have to attach rich data to those objects. Like a person, a worker is suited for a certain job, that is meta information that is attached to that object. So if moving and static objects, that is basically data quality. Then the math problem is to calculate the distance between those two objects and estimating time between them, so for the ETA. And then also figuring out indoor navigation in a three-dimensional environment, a travel path. So that is also a math problem. And then the logistical problem is summed up in open source code stacks and converting, here an example, just converting 2D SVG or canvas drawings into 3D models to automate, or like at least make it very easy to create three-dimensional content that can be then used by the facility management workers. And my generalization in this case is to take a step back. Like, I know we're talking about facility management, but I wanted to go a little bit more umbrella on that situation. So I say, my statement is government-funded institutions, as an example, hospitals, research labs, educational facilities, and universities aren't able to showcase their buildings in a three-dimensional interactive way because there's no fallback for assistive technology. And why do I think or know that is a fact? Is because there's very strict ADA compliance guidelines. If an institution gets government funding and they don't comply to ADA guidelines, they get defunded. So that's a real problem. Section 508 and 503 talk about the disadvantagement of people using technology if they have any disabilities of any kind. So it's very important to make this an inclusive experience that is empowering everyone of every kind of background. And there is clearly at the moment no standards for accessible 3D and XR experiences, which is currently being worked on at the XR Access initiative and the symposium that's starting next week. So we're currently working on those standards actively. So, but currently there is none at the moment. And that's why institutions are a little bit shy of adapting anything new too fast. And another thing that I see is that the current solutions just seem sufficient. And I don't want to put MIT on the spot here, but this is just an example I picked. This is the MIT campus accessibility map. It's a PDF. It's an accessible PDF. But you can see here, just you don't need to really zoom in, but you can already understand that it's not an optimal navigational solution, and it's not really pleasant as a user experience. So there's clearly room for improvement, just to give people the power to navigate maps better with accessibility features. Then I want to share the goal. Like the fourth part is to share the goal. And I do that like as a user, I want to be able to navigate buildings with any device in any dimension. And as a user, I want to know where to go and how long it will take me to get there. So out of the abstraction, I see like two main goals for the user. And then the challenge is obviously the devices. I want to make sure it works on mobile, tablet, desktop, VR headsets, AR headsets, glasses. Think about it as like a first dimension text-to-speech screen readers, like linear experience, so 2D experience on flat screens, 3D on touch displays, and then going into the XR space with mobile, AR, or HMDs and glasses. Yeah, so now that I set up my goals and my abstract idea, now the big part is here to find a hackathon that makes it possible for me to actually build what I'm envisioning. So when you find your hackathon, you have a lot of opportunities. On the one hand, you want to make sure that the event has enough time and support for you and then your team to realize your MVP. You can look into industry-specific events like the AAC hackathon that's currently going on. Actually, it starts this weekend. And that AAC hackathon is about building infrastructure, building engineering, construction. It's very, very specific. And they're very embracing XR at the moment, so it's really cool. AT&T and T-Mobile obviously focus on streaming and data and communication. And then XR Edu Challenge is a hackathon that focuses on education. There's a lot of university-sponsored events like the MIT Reality Hack, the NYU Abu Dhabi Hackathon, which is a very interesting hackathon that focuses on accessibility a lot, and a lot of others. I need to go through all of them. But consider the length of the event as well, because the South by Southwest Hackathon is just 24 hours. And does your hypothesis, does your MVP, is it realistic to be built in 24 hours? Or do you really have to solve some hard questions, some hard ideas? And do you need help? So the idea here is to pick a hackathon that gives you ample time to really dig deep and do the right job. So check out who is attending, right? Like most hackathons that have been around for a little while, they have photos, so you can see if they're what the kind of people are that go to these hackathons. You want to make sure it's inclusive. You want to make sure there's a lot of different diverse people there, all different age groups, all different backgrounds. Very important to also see if they're driving their efforts towards accessibility, because I mean, in my case, accessibility was the whole reason why I wanted to build that. And what is the mission of the event? Usually hackathons have mission statements, and also you can figure out some of those like missions by seeing what kind of awards and prizes are being given out. And they give you the opportunity to then see, okay, does my concept or my idea, my rough idea, fit in any kind of category that could win me a prize? Because why not, right? You're there to build something. You want to make sure you can realize it, and why not being rewarded for it on top of just building it? You can browse hackathons on DevPost, and all those links I will be sharing later. But then let's talk about the actual hackathon that I did. So I hacked and I built open source software. in January 2020, this year, you can't believe that it's already January 16 to 20. I was at the MIT Reality Hack in Boston at the MIT Media Lab. Yeah. So you see here, it's about 500 hackers. It's a gigantic event. It's one of the largest XR hackathons in the world, I believe. And they're doing a really good job, making sure to have a broad range of hardware devices. You see on the bottom left here an image of all the different devices that are being available for all the hackers to play with and experiment with. On the top center, you see an exercise. Actually, on the top, you see these crowds in the middle of this forum. They're putting papers on those pillars where they write up those ideas that they have and gather into groups to create teams. So on the top right, see my hackathon description was very sparse because I was thinking about more of a technological challenge instead of creating a game or anything else. So I said WebXR, progressively enhanced, indoor navigation, 1D, 2D, 3D, XR. That was it. That was very scarce, but also opened a lot of discussions. People were interested in WebXR as a device API. They wanted to learn more. So I could actually give them a lot of reason why they would want to join my team. And then in the middle on the bottom, you see the team that I have. And that's Peter and Hat, two very talented, one is a UX designer and the other one is a very talented AR developer who has worked on a lot of games, which later on will show very, very helpful and very made this project a success. So we defined then the hackathon title. Again, I'm German, so I love compound names, but it's more that I wanted to have the title of my hackathon project to be distinctive about what it actually does. So it's progressively enhanced indoor navigation in WebXR. The feature goals that we had was we want to create a scalable ecosystem, which means we have to think about the generation of the 3D space and then the navigation of the 3D space as two sides of the coin. Low entry barrier, open source code, device independence, a web-based framework, and a user-relevant metadata inside of the building. On the right-hand side, you see some card sorting and some sketches that we did in our little corner at the in our hack area. And on the bottom, see a very tiny wire flow of how we imagined how a person without any 3D knowledge could create 3D buildings just with drawing SVG and extruding it with WebGL. Here is a screenshot of my cell phone where I have a text overlaying a 3D visualization, which basically was an MVP to prototype and test. Can we nest data in text form and then parallel navigate a three-dimensional space? Because if we can navigate on the browser text, we can have it read out with screen reader software. And the canvas object in the back that showcases the 3D visualization of the building works in parallel. So we always use browser accessibility from the ground up instead of having to retrofit accessibility into a 3D ecosystem. We use the power of already existing assistive technology to use the browser to visualize that stuff. So that's on my cell phone. And then obviously on the desktop, the same thing. Once we reach the floor level, we have a grid system that helps us to navigate users. And I'm going to talk about that grid system in a little bit. On the bottom right, you see a screenshot of the HoloLens 2 that we built with, because we needed an AR headset in order to like try to find that technology into the AR space. Let me see if I can show you the quick video of how this looks moving. That's where the test comes in with our technology here. Let's see, boom. Oh, it does work, okay. So here really quickly, I show that I can actually drag and drop, navigate with keyboard parallel with the text, hover over areas, click into them, and work parallel with rich content, the text, at the same time navigating three-dimensional structures. So this is actually the MIT Media Lab campus. And this little blue room is the room where we actually were hacking. So I put that relationship in there because it's an institution, it's an educational institution. So I thought that it would be a good example. All right. And then once we have that, you see the elevator shaft in green, and you want to create navigation to go out of towards the elevator and run down. And then we go into the grid model where you here see dots, and that person position is a blue dot, and then we can navigate from a bird's eye view also in the in-person view. We can switch into the room view, and then I would navigate from dot to dot forward into the area where the elevator is. All right, so now we'll reach the elevator. Then we'll fade into a quick screen grab of the HoloLens. Yeah, so this is actually like anchoring the HoloLens position with a box, and then you see the overview grid on top of the room. And then you see a calculation of a pathfinder. Here, the blue dots of where you have to go in order to exit that room, and then navigate to the elevator. I don't think it goes all the way to the elevator. I'm not sure with the video right now. No, all right, but that's the concept. So there were a lot of challenges with indoor navigation. One challenge was the imprecision and directions. And these are general challenges, right? Indoor navigation is not a new problem to be solved. It's actually been a lot of problems down the line. A lot of people try to use like mapping software or like screen grab or photogrammetry in order to capture size of the room and borders. It's just very imprecise. Navigation always happens towards unknown areas. There's a lack of visibility and occlusion. Space, the conditions in the environment changes also. Like there could be an elevator out of order, there could be a room under construction, or just restricted for certain kinds of peoples with they don't have the authority to go to certain places. So like it's always a nimble and changing place, right? Indoor boundaries, definition of indoor boundaries usually done manually is really time consuming. And it's a big challenge to figure out the orientation of the actual user and position of the person that's going from A to B. So the solution that we had found is that indoor navigation could be done with this spatial grid. You can actually like flood a room floor with a dot pattern and then take out dots where the person is not allowed to go, or it's not good. It doesn't work for the person. Let's say I'm a wheelchair bound person, I need to go to a different floor, to a different room. I would just make the staircase like not navigationable. So therefore the math that calculates my pattern to go would just ignore stairs, because with a wheelchair, I'm bound to elevators. So that's a use case, and we're using like this safe and effective indoor guidance system for the users. And the inspiration from that was Peter's background is game development, and he refers to a grid pathfinding framework for that. The software stack we used for this hackathon was obviously WebXR and progressively enhanced, which is the nature of browser-based, web-based virtual reality and augmented reality. We used 3JS and Azure, Vuforia, and Unity for the HoloLens 2. And we also made sure that it works with it works also with assistive technologies. Most important part of going to a hackathon, and I want to repeat this again, is that you have to user test your project with other hackers. there's a reason why you did all the research to get there. There's a reason why you went to that event and spent your time and maybe took a vacation to go there, because you saw the potential of testing with users. This is your one shot to feel out if the MVP has feed, it's working or not. So test your project. And usually during the hacking time, it's not really easy. There's always mentors floating around, the people that are interested in what you're building, but mostly the hackers are hacking. But after the hackathon, there's a show and tell, there's a demonstration, there's a place and time when you can showcase what you worked on. And that's really, even though you might be really exhausted, this is the perfect place to gather as much feedback as possible to bring your project to the next level and make it really good. So now that we arrived at the end of the hackathon, now we have to revert it back and make a case at work. And the way I do it, and I think that is a good pattern that we can use, is that first thing, I share my hackathon project in a lunch and learn. That's me talking about design process and hackathons at work. I showcase what user pain points my project solves. So that means that I showcase the umbrella version, the generalized version, right? That it's not really related to the company directly, but it solves definitely issues that are known. And then I readapt the hackathon project to the initial product feature afterwards. I create task flows, wireframes, and a clickable prototype. And with that, after that, I am ready to have it put on the product roadmap as a real feasible product. So here, really quickly, just a task flow and the wireframe of how to I adopted the hackathon to the product at the company. And then I built out a prototype and a comp here. This is the Looking Glass Factory holographic touch display, which showcases like three-dimensional data in like a holographic glass box. Really interesting, because you can see from different angles where the information is. So that's an XR device. So I thought that would be a powerful visualization tool. And on the right-hand side, you see how the three-dimensional visualization is being implemented in the current application on the desktop. So in order to wrap this up quickly, I want to do a quick recap. I know this was a lot of information, and thank you for staying with me and being concentrated. I did talk about design and design maturity, understanding where you are and leveraging what you can do and where you can improve, the knowledge and the acceptance of design across your company. I talked about the facility management, a area vertical that definitely needed help in design, and I was very I was humbled to be a part of a solution there. The ideas that don't fit, how to define the ideas, how to define your MVP, find a hackathon, build that MVP, and then convert it back to what your work needs in order to give the company something like that's proven on a technical, proven on a general way, and then ends up in the roadmap. This slide is an ending slide. I have a bunch of projects I do. I definitely teach accessibility and VR, XR in hackathons, and also mentor and have a meetup, the A-Frame New York City Meetup group. If you're interested in learning more about web-based virtual reality and augmented reality, you can sign up at that meetup, and it's always free. I'm happy to showcase how or help you to build prototypes in web-based immersive web. And here's a slide to get in touch with me. Resources, right, about the things that I talked about. Yeah, Thomas, this is basically it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm excited to have you all here and listen to me of how my journeys are going with product features that don't fit the roadmap, and I make them work with hackathons. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Roland. That's a great presentation. And I'll echo that I've been to your A-Frame New York City meetup, and it's really cool. So I think most of our people are remote here, but I think a lot of the resources you've made for that that was my first AR project I did when you built the scanning codes or showing how to use those little cards to get a.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually do them on Zoom because of
cool.
COVID-19 anyway. So I'm gonna line up the next one-on-one soon. So if you sign up now, then you can be part of the first. Like after a little while, we had a little break, but I'll bring it back, and it will be remote. It will be online. So that's the plan. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah. So for those here, I'm going to paste a link to your meetup in the chat. So that's something cool in Hubs too. We can put links there. So does anyone have questions for Roland? If you'd like, you can type them into the chat or unmute your microphone and ask them. While we're waiting, so yeah, Roland, one question I had was for the. Oh, cool. Let's get, all right, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Roland, for the presentation, and definitely going to be checking out your A-frame. I wanted to see if you have on all the recent LiDAR stuff, iPad, and map physical locations, and I've been really into this. I love this. Bringing the real world sort of and like converting it a VR space. I just was wondering what's your take on all kind of emerging technologies?
Yeah, so that's a good question. iPad LiDAR is definitely it's in an infancy stage again. I tend to obviously I'd love to hackathons are usually there to give people the chance to try out the newest and shiniest and best and things. But since the iPad is the only device that has the LiDAR right now, it's very much specific to a certain device. So it doesn't fall in the category device independence. I much more focus on computer vision, surface recognition that is based on simply with a camera, right? Foreground, background, middle ground kind of technology. So those can be found as JavaScript libraries. There's Eighth Wall and others that are understanding surfaces. So by using just those kind of streaming services, you can make a use case. Because I mean, if you are lucky enough to work in a company that can define what kind of device is being used, then you can go for those kind of technologies that are cutting edge. But if you are in building for educational or research facilities that are catering to a broad range of people, all different kind of wallets, right? They can maybe not afford the latest technology, and then you just think about the gap between the telephones that we have right now and the telephones that people are still using. I know people are using iPhone 5s still, right? So there's a huge technology gap in between the iPhone 12 that's going to come out and the iPhone 5 that's being used actively. So, again, you can build proofs of concept with the latest technology, LiDAR, and all the kind of fancy stuff that's coming out right now. But you have to find ways to bring it gracefully degrading down to a reasonable experience for people that don't have that technology in order to make it a feasible feature down the line. Because like I said, unless you can dictate what device is being used by your users, it's not going to be a broadly used experience. And I think one of the reasons is that one of the reasons why Amazon is featuring their AR visualization since 2007 very much undercover. I don't know how many people here know that Amazon has actually the chance that you can actually in some products put them in AR through your cell phone on your desk, on your floor, similar to Wayfair or IKEA. So that's not being a hugely promoted feature. That's being it's in a test beta stage, more or less. People discovered on surprise because it's not something that all devices can do, right? So that's my point about that. So you have to, like, if your user or your customer is in that space, go for it. It's perfect. But if not, you have to definitely find ways to make it still a good experience for anyone that does not have that specific hardware.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions, please?
I wanted to ask for the HoloLens sort of video demo you're doing for the wayfinding. So you're talking about testing, even though you're tired, the best audiences like to test with the hackathon participants. So I'm just curious, like, what kind of feedback did you get, and how many people were you able to try that out with at the hackathon?
So, like, there was two parts to it. Obviously, the one part that was mostly there was two parts. The one part was the navigation from, like, the keyboard navigation, or like these, like, to navigate from campus to building to floor to room and backwards. So to log in certain floors and giving that, and then on the floor level, the navigation from door to door. That grid system was, there was some technical issues there. It definitely is not a WebXR experience, because we had to use Vuforia and Azure to, like, anchor and use Unity in order to do that. Internet Explorer is currently not 100% working well on the HoloLens 2. We actually had a device from one of the mentors that had the latest release of Internet Explorer that was able to use WebXR. So there was a lot of technical challenges. The in-the navigation testing was basically a code-driven kind of experience. For me, it was important to have people understand what's going on and asking them if it makes sense, right? Or just have them drive a little bit and then get like while they're doing it, speak out loud what they feel, what they think. We tested with a handful, like less than 10, because this is a crowded event. And if it's not a shiny thing, then you don't get the attention. But we still leveraged a lot of feedback. Yeah, you have to think about, you're competing. There's 500 hackers, over 100 teams. So in order to see everything, people have an attention span that's very limited. So you can get what you can get. And the user feedback that I got was that it made total sense. So everyone totally got it, and I didn't have to explain much. And that was the most important part, because in the company I was working with mechanical engineers. They're not designers, and like to explain something that has a lot to do with user experience to people that are not user experience designers, it needs to be so simple that you can explain it, and that doesn't degrade anyone. It's just, in general, if your idea is not able to, you can't explain it to a 3-year-old child, and the 3-year-old child explains it to the next 3-year-old child, and the other 3-year-old child understands it. Unless you're on that level, it's too complicated, right? So that's the rule of thumb. So I wanted to reach that level, and I think it worked, right? Even though my presentation took a long while to actually dig deep, but in principle, it's clear.
Yeah, I was thinking for that wayfinding, I know we've had this presentation the past at one of the New York City meetups, but sort of like emergency exits or knowing the way out and making that accessible, that seems like a cool use for what you're making too.
So talking about that is like the creation, the part where you create the 3-dimensional building. You basically upload floor plans and define grids. Like you're painting by numbers. That's the game. And you basically give people with certain kind of features, or like accessibility features, or with like restrictions based on like you're not allowed to be in that room because you're not a staff member or something. So you can create grid patterns that are relevant to the movable object of the work or the person, right? So person has A, B, C privileges and then sees A, B, C grid masks on top of a navigational room. So if I'm a wheelchair bound person, I don't even care about the stairs, right?
Right.
Or I don't
Right.
care about hallways that are too slim, or, you know, and these maps are disposable and can be templated. So on that backend platform that we designed, we gave the people that are working on that floor the chance to create grids specifically for like, oh, we have an event, there's currently a lot of desks there, so there's not actually an empty room, so it's not navigationable. So the quick disposable grids that are attached to the user and their needs is what the key element of that one was, right?
Very cool. All right, I'm going to take one more call for questions. We have time for one more. If anyone would like to ask it, please do so now. We can also chat after the stream. Okay, well, I want to say thank you again to Roland for the great presentation today. Really appreciate learning about this process and hope it's something I can do with my company. I want to say thank you to Tess from White Coat Captioning for the great captions today, and to Jolly McPhee from the Internet Society of New York for our great YouTube stream. I was checking the YouTube stream and everything looked great today. And so, as we mentioned, the recording of this talk will be available on YouTube, and we also do recaps of the presentation. So we'll be doing a recap of Roland's presentation on our blog at Equal Entry, and we'll be sharing that out. If you haven't, check out our YouTube page and subscribe. We are trying to get to 100 subscribers so we can get our specific URL that'll tie to A11Y VR. And we'll be having our next meeting most likely in 1 month from now. So stay tuned to the meetup page to find out about that. And again, thank you everyone for coming. We'll come down now to the floor and we can have a conversation and socializing now, and we'll end the stream. Thanks everyone.